Billionaire investor and former Facebook executive Chamath Palihapitiya went on CNBC to give his take on what he thinks we should do in terms of the bailout money. Should we bail out the corporations or should we bail out the people? Let's take a listen to what he has to say.
But are you suggesting, you keep saying propping up zombie companies. Are you arguing to let airlines, for example, fail?
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does that make sense in the broader scheme of the economy?
Because when you look at what it means, this is why I'm saying, like, this is a lie that's been purported by Wall Street. When a company fails, it does not fire their employees. It goes through a packaged bankruptcy, right? If anything, what happens is the people who have the pensions inside those companies, the employees of these companies, end up owning more of the company. The people that get wiped out are the speculators that own the unsecured tranches of debt or the folks that own the equity. And by the way, those are the rules of the game. That's right, because these are the people that purport to be the most sophisticated investors in the world. They deserve to get wiped out. But the employees don't get wiped out. The pensions don't typically get wiped out.
Why does anybody, I just don't understand, why does anybody deserve, using your word, to get wiped out from a crisis created like this? How does anybody deserve to get wiped out?
Well, but just be clear, like, who are we talking about? We're talking about a hedge fund that serves a bunch of billionaire family offices. Who cares? Let them get wiped out. Who cares? They don't get to summer in the Hamptons. Who cares?
I mean, there are people. You don't think the employees? Hold on, Scott. You don't think the employees of these companies own stocks? I mean, own their stocks, own the company's stocks?
You can look on Bloomberg and you can see what percentage of these companies are typically owned by. These things are owned by BlackRock. These things are owned by these huge, amorphous organizations. Ultimately, downstream, and the employee owns a few $100s or a few $1,000s of shares.
Well, I just don't understand. So this is like a natural disaster. And why does anybody deserve to get wiped out? Wouldn't that be immoral in and of itself?
No, because what's happening right now is what I'll tell you is on Main Street today, people are getting wiped out. And right now, rich CEOs are not, boards that had horrible governance are not, hedge funds are not, people are. 6 million people just this week alone basically saying, holy mackerel, I don't know how I'm going to make my own expenses for the next few weeks, days, months. So it's happening today to individual Americans. And what we've done is disproportionately prop up and protect poor performing CEOs, companies, and boards. And you have to wash these people out.
So that's probably one of the best responses that I've ever seen anywhere on the mainstream media, especially when it comes to this issue. I mean, and to be fair, he actually does have a little bit of a different background from a lot of other billionaires. I mean, a lot of billionaires inherit at least a significant portion of their money or, came from like the upper middle class or something like that. In his instance, he actually grew up like legitimately poor in Sri Lanka and, before coming to Canada. And then now he lives in the United States. So he actually does have a bit of a different background, a bit of a different perspective from a lot of other billionaires out there. So maybe that's part of the reason why, but he does a fantastic job there pointing out that, look, we don't have to be out here just interested in the bottom line of corporations. I mean, we seem to be in a situation right now where we're trying to negotiate, trying to figure out, trying to make sure that companies are able to keep their bottom line. That's like the way this, bailout, the CARES package was structured so that companies could, keep their bottom line, but then still be able to fire workers in a lot of instances. I mean, our priorities are completely reversed. Right now, we shouldn't be worried about making sure that corporations can turn out profits. Right now, we need to make sure that the average person is okay. Because guys, look, the fact is someone's going to have to lose out, right? When it comes to this debate, when it comes to, shutting down the economy, someone's going to have to lose something. Like that's just how it works. And the question is whether or not the rich are going to have to lose out at least something, or whether or not the people who are already struggling are going to have to, lose out and lose something. And right now it seems like, at least the way the CARES package was structured, it looks like working families are going to lose out. And that's not acceptable, quite frankly. So we can actually talk about restructuring this thing. And I think Chamath is, absolutely right to point out that that's something that we need to do. And I do disagree with the thing that I don't know his name, but the cable news guy who was interviewing him there, he was saying, well, guys, it's like he's like, oh, it's like a natural disaster. So why should they have to suffer in any way or lose out in any sense, or why do they deserve to get wiped out? Well, that's actually not true. Right, like the reason why they're in this situation right now is because they wasted all their money when we gave them that massive tax cut, when we gave them that massive giveaway, right? They wasted all their money on stock buybacks. Now, part of the reason for that is just like the way that our, financial system is structured, financial system is set up right now, where we don't really have investors anymore. We have speculators, right? They're just interested in getting a return on their money. And so, as soon as these companies have, have any extra money, what do? Instead of actually being interested in making sure that their sort of revenue streams are good, et cetera, they just buy up more shares so that then they can artificially raise the price and then please the investors, the speculators there, because that's all that they're there for. They're not interested in like investing in a company because they believe in the company, because they know the people who run the thing and they really believe in the mission, the value, et cetera, et cetera. No, they're just investing. They don't have a clue anything about it. They just look at some top line numbers and then invest over a digital machine. Oftentimes, honestly, it's not even people. It's just computers. It's just robots trying to maximize profit, trying to maximize investment, trying to find the best bet, trying to find the best gamble. And so then, you end up in situations where the owners of the company have absolutely no interest in the future of the company. They're only interested in, finding the maximum return. And so as soon as companies get any money, all the pressure from all the owners of the company isn't actually to do anything for the workers. It's just to immediately, sort of give money returned to them. And so that's just sort of the structural system that we've set up, that we've created under capitalism, because it allows some people to get incredibly, incredibly wealthy. And that's just how things run. That's just how things work. And so, you end up in this disaster situation. I mean, I think the thing that we're talking about right now is where, in the past, like in 2008, 2009, it was the big banks who were making all these risky bets. Well, right now, it seems like it's a lot of these hedge funds. Like if you actually dig into some of the details here, it seems like basically the big banks previously were making all these incredibly risky investments. And now it looks like all these hedge funds who didn't get the same kind of regulations after 08, 09, now they're the ones making these kinds of risky investments. And so we end up in a situation where you're looking at all these companies, all these corporations who had, like 10, 11, 12, 15 times or terms leverage. And, now all of a sudden we're trying to figure out, well, where'd all their money go? Well, they didn't have any money in the first place because they just engaged in stock buybacks. All their portfolio was debt. And so all these companies are just shallow shells, I guess. And so they don't have anything. They don't have any ability to weather any kind of storm, because even the bigger ones, it was all debt. It was all just financed by debt. There was no actual there because they didn't actually invest in their workforce. They didn't actually, invest in actual on the ground things. It was all just, debt accumulating and just building up a corporation, building up a company. And actually, that's one of the criticisms that he actually has been making, Chamath there has been going around making, which is that, and he's an elite investor, so he knows what he's talking about. But I mean, this is, the stuff that he's been out here talking about, that he's been talking about for weeks, talking about for months, which is how it's becoming increasingly clear that all of these companies were just complete shells. They were just complete, they were just holes. They didn't, the economy that we had under Trump really, and even before that under Obama, it was nothing. It was air. It was just, it was just air and making everybody rich. And that's one of the points that he's been making. And I think it's really good. I think that it's well put. And really, if we're going to go forward when it comes to this economy, if we're going to be able to reopen, the thing that we're going to have to do, honestly, at some point is move to some kind of IgG or IgM. I think that's what they're called, antibody test or something like that. Try to figure out who are the people who already got the coronavirus, but maybe were asymptomatic carriers or something like that, and then slowly let people begin to return to work. I think that's really the only way we can actually begin to reopen the economy, if we actually want to, move forward with things. Because, there was just that report that came out just a few days ago that, actually maybe it was just 2 days ago, where basically if we tried to reopen the economy after only a 30-day kind of shutdown, basically things are just going to respike in the summer, and it'll be as if nothing was ever done at all. So basically, it would have all been a waste. We would have just, been wasting our time in quarantine. All the harm that came to the economy would have just been a complete waste. So if we're going to shut down, it seems like we have to shut down for the long haul. But at the same time, we end up in this complete compromise situation where people are just losing their jobs left and right. I mean, I have, my best friend told me just yesterday he was furloughed off from his work. So I mean, you know, I mean, it's a complete nightmare situation right now. So we need to be like bringing people back into the workforce gradually, slowly, but carefully. That's really the only way that we're going to be able to get things done in the long run, that the stock market is going to be able to actually recover in the long run. That's really the only way we're going to be able to do it. But the only way to actually do that is if we're interested in serious investments for people, for workers, and not so focused on corporations. Let the corporations fail. Let them, you know, let them. Now, actually, to be slightly clear, one of the points that he did make, which was slightly, I don't know that incorrect is the wrong word, but maybe imprecise is more accurate. It is true that sometimes when companies fail, that workers can be harmed, that pensions can be harmed, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the point he was trying to make, if you sort of like listen to how he was saying it quite closely, I think he's saying that it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like what we can do is basically let the companies fail and then pass laws, you know, Congress acting as, you know, a response to this thing is companies that fail during this crisis get a bailout package which protects workers. I think that's the point which he's trying to make, and that's a point which I think he's made on Twitter before. So, you know, just clarifying sort of what his point was, because it sounds like he was incorrect, but I think actually he just wasn't entirely clear. I think that was more so what was going on there. And I think that that's the way to go, right? Just let the companies fail, but then Congress has to be writing laws out there which basically protect workers during this crisis from, who go to companies that fail, and basically make it so that the companies basically the workers repossess those companies that fail. Like basically give workers ownership of the companies that fail, and then basically reboot things up that way. And then, you know, you send the money to the workers so that then they can go back to work. And then all those investors, all those speculators who were running things previously, they're just out of luck. They're just out of luck. That's really the only way to do it. We have to restructure the economy if we want to make it through, and we do have to, if we want to reopen, you have to reopen slowly. I think that's really the only way we're going to be able to get anything done. So anyway, those are just sort of my thoughts on this thing. So anyway, let me know what you think about it. But for now, if you like the video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.